What you are about to hear is not conspiracy. It is not theory. It is a documented pattern that appears in court records, published peer-reviewed literature, and internal industry memos that were never supposed to be public. 3 scientists, 3 discoveries, 3 careers destroyed. Each of them found something real. Each of them published it. Each of them was right. And in each case, the organizations with the most to lose did not commission independent research to check the findings. They commissioned campaigns to destroy the people who found them. Number 3. Discovered something in 1956. The establishment spent 25 years telling the world she was wrong. She died before they admitted she was right. Number 2 proved in 1979 that a legal product was lowering the IQ of every child in America. The response was a private investigator, a misconduct investigation, and a decade of professional destruction. And number one was hired by the company to do the research. He found the wrong answer. What followed is documented in 102 pages of internal emails released under litigation. This is not a video about fringe science. Every researcher named in this video published in peer-reviewed journals. Every suppression campaign named in this video is documented in public records. Every finding named in this video is now accepted science. The only question is how long it took and what happened in between. This is the Strange History Archive. We find the documents. We read them out loud. Let's start with number 3, Oxford University. Dr. Alice Stewart is trying to understand why childhood leukemia rates are rising. She designs a study. She interviews the mothers of every child who died of cancer in England and Wales between 1953 and 1955. Nearly 1,500 families. The finding is stark. Children who died of cancer were nearly twice as likely to have received prenatal X-rays. One single X-ray during pregnancy, doubling the risk of childhood cancer. Stewart publishes in The Lancet in 1956. It is one of the most significant epidemiological findings of the decade. The Medical Research Council refuses to fund follow-up research. Radiologists publicly attack her methodology. Hospital boards dismiss the findings as preliminary. The nuclear industry, which has a significant interest in maintaining that low-dose radiation is safe, funds counter-studies through affiliated researchers. For the next 2 decades, Stewart's work is treated as fringe science. There is a specific reason it has to be fringe. In 1956, the United States and the United Kingdom are both conducting atmospheric nuclear tests. Millions of civilians are being exposed to low-dose radiation fallout. If Stewart is right about X-rays, the implications for nuclear testing are catastrophic. Her data is not just inconvenient for radiologists, it is inconvenient for governments. Here's what they weren't telling you. In 1970, Stewart begins collaborating with statistician George Neal. Their reanalysis of the original data in subsequent studies produces the same result every time. One prenatal X-ray doubles childhood cancer risk. The data holds across 14 years of replication. By 1980, the evidence is overwhelming. The American College of Radiology quietly begins advising against routine prenatal X-rays. No announcement. No acknowledgement that Stewart had been right for 24 years. No correction to the bodies that had spent 2 decades calling her work unreliable. Stewart receives the Right Livelihood Award in 1986. She is 79 years old. She continues publishing until she is 95. She dies in 2002, 1956. The Medical Research Council never funded her follow-up research. The organizations that opposed her findings issued no formal apology. The counter-studies funded by nuclear industry affiliates remain in the literature uncorrected. Routine prenatal X-rays are now contraindicated globally. That contraindication is the direct result of Alice Stewart's 1956 data. She was right in 1956. The establishment knew it by 1970. Routine practice changed in the 1980s, and nobody said her name. That is number 3. Number 2 is different, because number 2 wasn't just ignored. Number 2 was investigated. 1979, Dr. Herbert Needleman at the University of Pittsburgh publishes a study in the New England Journal of Medicine. He has analyzed the shed teeth of 2,146 children and measured their lead levels. The children with higher lead concentrations score significantly lower on IQ tests, attention measures, and classroom behavior assessments. The conclusion is direct. Leaded Petrol is lowering the cognitive function of children at population scale, not dramatically, not in a way any individual child or parent would notice, quietly, consistently, across an entire generation. Needleman calls it the greatest environmental cause of subtle brain damage in children. The Ethyl Corporation, which manufactures the lead additive used in Petrol, responds immediately. They do not commission independent replication. They hire a private investigator. The investigator goes through Needleman's raw data looking for errors, omissions, or misconduct. He finds none. The Ethyl Corporation then files a formal misconduct complaint with the National Institutes of Health, alleging data manipulation. Needleman spends 4 years under investigation. He is exonerated completely in 1992. Here's what they weren't telling you. Internal Ethyl Corporation strategy documents surfaced during subsequent litigation show the misconduct complaint was not a response to scientific concern. It was a coordinated strategy. The documents show executives discussing how to delay regulatory action on leaded petrol by discrediting the lead IQ research at its source. Needleman is named specifically. The objective, written in the documents, is to neutralize his influence on the regulatory process. The EPA was considering restricting leaded petrol at the time the complaint was filed. The investigation delayed that process by years. Ethyl Corporation knew the science was solid. Their own internal toxicologists had reached similar conclusions. The documents show they knew. The U.S. finally banned leaded petrol in 1996, 17 years after Needleman's original paper. A 2000 study in Environmental Health Perspectives estimated that the lead exposure of American children between 1976 and 1996 cost the United States between 319 and 1,185 IQ points per 1,000 children per year, for 20 years. Needleman retired in 2006. The Ethyl Corporation documents are in public court records. Drop a comment if you grew up in a country where leaded petrol was still in use when you were a child. I want to know how many of us there are. Number 2, hired a private investigator and filed a false misconduct complaint. Number 1 is worse, because number 1 put it in writing. All 102 pages of it. 1998, Syngenta, one of the world's largest agrochemical companies, hires Dr. Tyrone Hayes at the University of California, Berkeley to study atrazine. Atrazine is the second most widely used herbicide in the United States. Syngenta needs independent data confirming it is safe. Hayes runs the study. Atrazine chemically castrates male frogs at 0.1 parts per billion. The legal limit in U.S. drinking water is 3 parts per billion, 30 times higher than the concentration that demasculinizes frogs in his lab. The frogs exposed to atrazine develop multiple sets of testes. Some develop fully functional female reproductive organs. Some attempt to mate with other males. Hayes presents his findings to Syngenta. He expects them to verify the results. Instead, they pressure him to retract. He refuses. He publishes independently in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2002. What follows is documented in 102 pages of internal Syngenta emails, strategy documents, and meeting minutes released during litigation in 2012. Here's what they weren't telling you. The documents show Syngenta assembled a team to monitor Hayes personally. They tracked his speaking engagements. They compiled a dossier of his public statements. They discussed ways to discredit him professionally and personally. One document lists potential vulnerabilities to exploit. Another discusses placing sympathetic scientists at conferences where Hayes was speaking to challenge his data in real time. The campaign ran for a decade. Atrazine was banned in the European Union in 2004 based on contamination concerns. The U.S. EPA reviewed the data in 2011 and maintained the legal limit. The review process included testimony from scientists with documented financial relationships to Syngenta. Atrazine is still applied to approximately 75 million acres of U.S. cropland annually. It is detected in the drinking water of communities across the Midwest. The 0.1 parts per billion figure the concentration that causes reproductive abnormalities in Hayes' studies is detectable in U.S. tap water samples. The 102 pages of documents are in public court records from the litigation Hayes v. Syngenta. The EU ban is public regulatory record. Hayes still works at Berkeley. He still publishes. Syngenta was acquired by Kim China in 2017 for $43 billion. 3 scientists, 3 documented suppression campaigns, 1 pattern. They did not dispute the science. They dispatched investigators, filed false complaints, and built dossiers. Because disputing the science would have required engaging with evidence they already knew was correct. The documents say so. We are just reading them. Subscribe, because the archive is full, and we are not done.